to the Bites and Bites podcast, where we explore the fascinating intersections of food, technology, and cybersecurity. I'm your host, Kristen Demaranville, and today we have an incredible guest. Radojka Barycki joins us. She's a seasoned food defense and safety expert with over 2 decades of experience and a passion for protecting what we eat. In this episode, we'll recap our joint talk that we did together at the Food Safety Consortium on food defense and cybersecurity, and then we'll get into some fun industry discussions. Let's jump right in. We're just going to jump straight into it. Favorite food and favorite food memory. They do not need to be the same thing.
So my favorite food actually is a dish from Venezuela called pabellón criollo, which is dish that have white rice, shredded beef that is seasoned with a tomato sauce and black beans and the famous arepas along with plantain. So it's a very rich dish, and I would say that I associate my best memories with food around that dish because that's, part of the culture that I grew up. Not to mention that arepas, we ate that like breakfast, lunch, and dinner basically because it's our national bread, quote unquote. So yeah.
Wow. I can appreciate it all up to the plantains. I'm actually allergic to bananas, so I can't have them. I feel, it is very difficult at times to have an allergy to bananas and to deal with it, but I can't eat plantains. Even though they're more starchy like potatoes, I just can't eat them. So tragedy. But other than you could remove those off, I would be right there for it.
Yeah, you can.
That's all right. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, so my name is Radojka Barycki, and I am a food safety professional, and I currently work for a company called Safe Food Alliance as a director for training and consulting.
Amazing. And you've been doing this for a little bit, right? You've been in food safety for how long now?
24, going on 25 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. And just as long as I've been in cybersecurity at this point.
Like my kids will say, "Mom, that's a quarter of century."
Oh, thanks, kids. That's nice. Jeez, kids.
Exactly.
That's great. And we had the privilege of sharing a stage together at the Food Safety Consortium. Yeah, we had a great time. It was a bit of a rush presentation because I had to catch a flight. However, we managed. I think we did really good.
Good.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on our presentation and the conference. And just for context, for those who were not at the Food Safety Consortium, we spoke about food defense and cybersecurity being allies together in the fight for all things that are food and that we eat daily.
Yes. So I believe that the presentation went well. Mm-hmm. We have a decent-sized audience.
We did.
I think that as we spread awareness of how technology is not only increasing to our benefit in the food industry, it also poses a threat, and that we don't need to be afraid of it. We just need to tackle it. We need to be preventive. And I believe that during our presentation, we were able to convey that message about preventing these kind of incidents in the food industry, as they have been happening now for quite some time. And people I don't believe at this point, have the awareness of those incidents, to be honest with you. As much as I speak with people in the industry about cybersecurity and food defense, people just look at me like, where did that come from? And so I explain to them, like, listen, there have been incidents, we get more automated. It's not anymore like the phishing email or anything like that. We have to be aware that anything that is hooked to the internet, the cloud, or anything is accessible to these criminals, and we have to put gates in place. And so as I explained that to them, they're like, oh. And so I think that the presentation raised the awareness. I found interesting that among the audience, there was a lady that was from AFDO. And I went to the follow-up conversation or presentation that she had. I believe it was the next day. where she and another company are working on a process to collect data for traceability. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about technology. So I think that, having her in the audience, she was actually getting pointers as to, okay, so how technology is going to affect, food defense, whatever I'm doing or working on the project. So I think, again, people are seeking that understanding, and us speaking to it openly and more frequently will bring that awareness to the industry, which I think is just in the learning stages at this moment.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an awareness piece right now, maybe a bit of education as well. But yeah, I really love when I watch people have the light bulb moment of the connection, like, oh yeah, this really is together and we really need to care about this. And it's beautiful when it happens because it's very obvious to you and I, but the rest of the community is like, great, now what? One more thing I've got to add to my concern list. We don't want to burden people, right? It's just an awareness moment. Like, hey, if you're touching technology that touches food, you should probably add it to your food safety strategy. That's all we're asking. We're not asking you to boil an ocean. We're just asking you to, make that cup of tea in your facility. Right. I definitely can appreciate all that you just said. And something that I really liked during the presentation is you made it personal when you were talking during your part, which I love, because we can sit up there all day long like little robots and be like, here's your security awareness talk, which is, as we all know, kind of boring. I don't know why it's so boring, but it really is. But you talked about how you related back to safety and security of your person. And I want you to share that just a little bit again here, because it really impacted me even on stage. I was so taken aback by the connection that you made there. And I hope the rest of the room caught it when you did it.
So there are two folds to that. I refer to the example of people receiving letters in the mail about, your data being breached at, let's say, at a hospital or a financial institution, and then you get that letter. Which, by the way, I got another one this
Yay!
week. Another one of those. We regret to inform you.
Well, at least they're informing.
Right. And so, and we typically, right, because we have had those experience, we only kind of make the connection of cybersecurity through those kind of institutions. Right. And so that was one of the experiences that I referred to. And then the other one was to illustrate how we, on a consistently basis, daily, we have to make risk assessments for our own safety. So I referred to the time that, growing up in Venezuela, even though I grew up before the whole debacle that is going on right now, we were learning from the time I can remember about personal safety in making risk assessments. Depending on where were you going, what kind of a vehicle or transportation you were going to use, then you will make the decision for personal risk. Do I, put my nice jewelry on? Do I take a purse? Do I actually hide the money? Not wearing anything that could attract, attention to me, just dress in one way, dress in another. So because of that, I believe that I grew up with a lot of awareness in terms of security and a lot of not only risk assessment, but I tell people I grew up malicious, like my mind is malicious. I always think about the worst first. And then, and I admit I have trust issues. So that's probably what it has heightened my perception about cybersecurity and relating it now to food and how, yes, I'm excited about all this technology. AI, my God, I look at that every day. If there is a tool that can help me make my job easier or my client's job easier, I definitely will recommend it. I definitely will adopt it. But then I do also recognize that with that comes greater responsibility, which is now prevention for giving access to people that are there thinking maliciously on how to gain economic, they might have also the intention to harm people. Combined, it's not just the economic gain, but also might have the intention to harm people. And there is a reason why the Bioterrorism Act was created, which was the other related, which was when the accident, or not the accident, but the attack happened to the Twin Towers, I was actually looking at that live because I was getting my passport to come here to the US. To reunite with my then husband. So all of those experiences really have put my alert cap on and basically try to alert now people, hey, this technology is great, but be careful. There is another fold to that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, that's so right. And you're definitely in good company. Well, for the listeners here, we're all very security minded, or as you say, maliciously minded. And it's funny because I often say that experiences in your life inform how you view the world, of course, but people forget that where you lived and the culture you grew up in also is an informant. And I do think that being of a security mindset in general, a nicer way to put it, is not a bad way to be. I find that it helps heighten curiosity. You're always curious. Like, why would somebody do something like that? Or what if they could do it like that? Or that's interesting. I wonder how that works. I think that is part of the reason why a lot of us love being in the industry, whether we admit it or not, to ourselves or others. I think we really enjoy the curiosity moments and the problem solving. And I know that this is why I love the food industry so much, because there's so much of that on the food safety, food security, and food defense side. You're always kind of trying to figure out the ins and outs of how food can be changed and manipulated and adulterated, and why. And those answers are sometimes really hard. So I appreciate you thinking like that and keeping food safe, because I think that's great. I think everybody else would agree with that. And I loved that part of the talk so much because it just really grounded and resonated with me on a personal level. And I could see in the crowd, it did for others as well. The whole like, yeah, maybe we should think like that. Or that's interesting, because they already are. They just don't realize it, that it's part of the process. I was glad that we had questions when we were there. I think what I'm worried about when I start spouting off security processes or strategies is that they're just going to go, ew, it's more work for me. I don't want to deal with this. But I'm just trying to roll it into their normal day activities. Thank you for tuning in to the Bites and Bites podcast. I'm so excited to share that we've hit a milestone, 6,000 downloads in just over a year. And we're being listened to in 69 countries worldwide. This is all thanks to you, the amazing listeners. Wow. Truly appreciate your support. I also have some exciting news to share. Anzen Sage, the company behind Bites and Bites podcast, has been selected as a finalist for the 2024 Loudon Innovation Challenge. We're thrilled to be recognized, but need your help to win the People's Choice Award. Voting closes Wednesday, December 4th at midnight, Eastern Standard Time, and it only takes 2 seconds and no emails required to vote. Please cast your vote for Anzen Sage using the link in the show notes. Thank you again for supporting us and for helping raise awareness of the critical cybersecurity risks in food and agriculture. Now back to the episode. An example of something that you've done in your career now that you've kind of already changed your security mindset, despite the fact that you're preconditioned to have a security mindset anyways, but how you've rolled it into your next processes with your clients and even in any work you're doing now of how you can remind people to pay attention to cybersecurity while they're doing their food safety audits.
So that's interesting because prior to the actual conference, I took the class for the intentional adulteration rule.
That's right.
And it was an eye-opener for me, honestly speaking. So the nature of the industry, to be honest with you, is to comply with whatever it's in the regulations, which is the minimum requirement. Now with GFSI and globalization since the 2000s, now they think a little bit more globally and the standards actually provide a little bit more in-depth programs that you need, including food defense. But when we looked at the intentional adulteration rule, at the time that the regulation was enacted or written or put into effect, cybersecurity was there, but it wasn't a threat really for the food industry because the technology was still being developed. 2015, even though we had advanced a lot into the internet and all the technology, but really this AI and all these other, automated processes were not really well developed. So at the time, the current thought of the FDA was physical, right? Physical and insiders. Not so much outsiders, because a lot of people were aware of the outsiders. So we have a strong gatekeeping on that. But, and I still find when I do my assessments, a lot of weakness on that as well. But they focus the regulation really on the insider attack and the physical opportunities that people will have to contaminate the food. Yeah. Which again, at the time was what we were facing. But now, combining that knowledge and having clients approaching us with food defense vulnerability assessments, now I have to bring that other piece. Hey, the regulation doesn't say this, but do you have this possibility? How automated is your process? And it's not just being automated as to just push a button and it gets a pump going. Is that reliable on a source where you have to be connected to the internet? Right? Because if it's just automation that you just push a button, but everything is just to get the equipment going, and there is not really anything that allows anybody from the web to go in, the threat is not necessarily there. But if these systems, which we are gearing to be more and more into that type of web-related systems, especially now with the traceability rule that is requiring the industry to be more proficient at traceability, you will find, and for the last, I would say, couple of years, since 2022, that people became more aware of the traceability rule, a lot of companies pushing AI for data traceability. And so because of that, now the threat increases. And we're not talking about one specific sector of the food industry. Like when we look at the food traceability list, we have a lot, and that expands to a lot of companies. So now the threats even increase. So that's how I basically, when I have clients, I give them that, hey, by the way, do you have these? Let's look at cybersecurity now.
Yeah, I think it's good to get ahead of it too, and then, have a conversation with the cyber team to understand how they interact with the food technology. Right. It goes beyond a lot, because the cyber physical space in general is still really confusing to a lot of people. How you can have that button you push, but it also can be pushed via a phone or in a computer in another room. It doesn't always have to be connected to the internet. It can be connected on an internal network that allows you to push a button and you're 2 miles away from the line, because some of these factories are huge. I think that it's partly been created not just for food volume production, but also employee safety, because it's not exactly safe to necessarily be in some of these facilities in the way that they are sometimes, depending on the process that it's in. But I think what's interesting is how we just chuck tech at things and then we expect it not to be an attack vector. I always find that really interesting, right? It would be the same as, food safety protocols. Let's throw this onto a belt and not clean it. It's how I feel about the same kind of concept. It's gross. So the traceability rule is really interesting because it really does touch over a lot of things, not just food we ingest because we're eating dinner or lunch or breakfast. It covers over, consumer goods, so CPGs and things like that, whether it's vitamins or supplements or deodorant, those kind of things have to be tested because they're coming in contact with us. Pet food, you name it, any of that, it's going to be traceability rules. And it's very daunting because traceability is huge. How do you trace the raw ingredient that went into one particular batch of cookies that shouldn't have nuts, but the facility that sent in that particular ingredient came from a nut factory? And tracing all that back, it's very daunting. So yes, AI and machine learning are going to be paramount in tackling that issue. But as we know, and you've already said, the cloud and other places are really dangerous places because we still don't know how to protect them fully. So having an awareness of it, let's be proactive rather than reactive. And I think the food industry is really good about being reactive. They're really good in a crisis, generally speaking, because we don't want people to die. But being proactive is sort of a hard change mindset. And I'm sure you have some stories about that and you've seen it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I can give you a particular experience that I had and I give in my classes very well. And that has prepared the industry and has taught us over time, not just with this incident, but others that, we do need to look at other things, not just the traditional factors or indicators that we typically look at.
announcement, everyone. If you're interested in ICS OT cybersecurity, whether you're a student, an industry newcomer, or a seasoned pro, B-Sides ICS OT is the place to be. Join us on February 10th in Tampa, Florida for a day packed with practical learning, real connections, and insights into securing critical infrastructure. This event is designed for everyone, no matter where you are in your career. B-Sides events are known for bringing people together, and this is the first B-Sides focused on ICS OT security. And for all the women in OT and ICS cybersecurity, don't miss the Women in ICS Cybersecurity reception that evening. Ready to be part of something impactful? Visit bsidesics.org for tickets, speaking opportunities, and more. Also, if you are planning on attending S4 in Tampa, it's the day before.
Wow.
Check out the website and hopefully I'll see you there.
So in 2006, there was a carrot juice recall for Clostridium botulinum. And at that time, up to that point, Clostridium botulinum was not a hazard to be considered in carrot juice, even though we were aware that it could be possibly present, but because the carrot juice was intended to be consumed refrigerated, then refrigeration was the control that we had for the Clostridium botulinum to basically remain sporulated and non-pathogenic. Well, we had in that year a couple of outliers of people that consumed the juice and left it unrefrigerated for extended period of time. So
Gross.
When that happened, obviously the juice reached temperatures where the Clostridium, now its spores, would germinate and generate the vegetative cells, and then the multiplication led to the botulism toxin to be in the juice, and people get botulism.
Super gross.
So now, because of that, when we do hazard analysis and we describe product and we develop our food safety plans, we look at, is there a possibility of a threat for unintended use of the product?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so things like that, it's what, those incidents is what have given us the learning. Unfortunately, I can tell you that, as you mentioned, the industry and the policies actually that are created, they are reactive. Mm-hmm. FSMA came as a reaction to Peanut Corporation of America.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is awful.
Right. And so right now we have Boar's Head, which now touches the USDA. And I'm pretty sure policies will come out from that incident as well. But my question for anyone in the industry and the government is like, why do we have to wait until things happen to actually foresee that this might have been an issue? In the case of carrot juice, we knew Clostridium was possible because, carrot grows on the ground. Where does Clostridium is at? In the ground, right?
Yeah.
And so why didn't we think about possible, misuse of product prior to the incident?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
it goes back to like the lettuce issue, right? The fact that they haven't regulated livestock yards to be moved away from lettuce to stop contaminating it with E. coli is absurd that we have. How long have we been dealing with E. coli and lettuce and other leafy greens? Years. Right. So you're right.
It comes down to at any area in the food industry or any business, it's come down to risk assessment.
That's right.
And for much that seemed like a burden, like you mentioned, that's going to create more issues. Fact is that we as professionals and as an industry need to have the commitment to keep people safe.
That's right.
And I always tell people or told people when I train them, and I still train when I tell them when I train them and my employees specifically at the sites, I would say, if you are making a product and you're not able to buy that product at the store and feed it to your family, then we have a problem, because that means we don't have the tasks or the procedures correctly done, or something is happening in the inside that we are not aware of. You know about it, and you know that the product is not safe. Mm-hmm. So if it's not safe for your family, then it's not gonna be safe for the public, and we need to know about it, because systems are not flawless. Let's make it clear.
That's true. That's very true.
If we're making a mistake or somebody's not following a procedure, we need to know about it, and we need to correct it, and we need to find the root cause if we have to, so the incident doesn't happen again. What we cannot afford is to have product out there that is going to make at some point somebody sick, like, comes kind of like the Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Right? Waiting to see if the person is going to get sick. If we are not aware of the process of the issue or the incident, and we cannot put the process back into place so the food is safe, then it becomes a Russian roulette.
Yeah, it's true.
And it goes beyond trust as well for the brand, because every time these incidents happen, what happened? The brand takes a hit. Look at McDonald's now with the onions and Taylor Farms.
Yep.
Yes, they're big companies. They're going to get through this. I'm telling you, they're going to get through this. But there is a financial hit. There is brand trust, right? I can tell you from the personal experience, when we had that big spinach recall back in 2006 as well, the 2000s was really bad for us.
Yeah, it really was, right? Oh,
recall.
Memories.
I mean, I'm avid spinach eater, and when we had that recall for the spinach, I stopped eating spinach for 3 years. So me being in the food industry didn't trust spinach at that point.
Yeah.
So again, it's not just getting people sick, but then there's other ramifications to that. So the idea is to be preventive.
That's right. And then also, you can't control consumer behavior, but trust me, we try to, because we don't want them to eat warm carrot juice that causes issues and other things. You were making me have a lot of memories while you were talking about learning how quality how they determine how long something can stay on the shelf, like shelf life testing for preservatives in food. And I didn't know that until I was in a quality lab for the first time, and it was frosting. And I kept thinking, why is this frosting over here? It looks like it has mold on it. They're like, oh, no, that's a test sample. But now I'm curious. Now you have to tell me what this is. So they were like, yeah, we're testing the preservatives inside this food to see how long the shelf life is so we can label it properly. And I thought to myself, why am I so stupid? And I didn't know they did that, because as a consumer, why would I know that? And we're so far removed from our food that we have no idea even how the simple things are made and whatnot. It's crazy. And I think the thing that frustrates me too is we have stupid problems that could be fixed very easily, but we continue on because we just rather be reactive than proactive. That's number one. But number two, our food system is so complicated now. It's so complicated. The food supply system is the most complicated system on the planet. We did this to ourselves. Traceability is going to be a spider web, and not even a well-organized spider web. Like, it's going to be like 18 spiders in one spider web. I'm sorry if people have arachnophobia, but it's true. It's so messed up, really. And I feel for all the food safety teams, because this is a really big task. And the fact that you make it personal when you talk to these people, when you train, I think that's the best way to win hearts and minds, to start having people realize and be curious. Because I always say, for me, it's not about the data for me. It's about safeguarding lives. Because the things that I work with and the systems that I'm in, whether it's a physical system or a digital system or working with people, it always goes back to saving someone's life. Just one thing that I did could either make or break that moment. Or when I go through a risk assessment, if I didn't talk to the food safety people in a food production facility or a farm, what am I doing? That doesn't make any sense, because that's what the product is. It'd be like not talking to a scientist if you were going through any type of really cool engineering tech that you were working on. It's crazy to think that, again, we have such a disconnect between our industries, and they're so siloed that when you start to actually go across them as a disruptor, like you and I are, people are like, wait, what? And it takes a couple of minutes. And once they get it, they know. And now I have people walking up to me, and I'm sure you will too, it's at conferences you haven't already, that say something like, I've been talking to my cybersecurity people. I'm like, great. Are they being nice to you? And they're like, yeah, they're really excited. We're working together on risk plans. Holy crap, it's amazing. Like, that's all I want to hear, because that's what it is. That's what we need to do. Looking ahead, I know we talked about AI briefly, but is there any other trends and technology that you think that are coming down the line that we should be kind of keeping an eye on? I know that there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen with FDA and USDA, especially with the new administration coming in. But I do think that obviously blockchain is still being adopted very quickly. But is there anything else you're seeing on a food safety perspective? Any new tech that's coming there on that side?
Not in particular that, I'm aware of. That raises as much concern as what you mentioned, the blockchain and the AI machine learning. But I'm sure somebody's creating something somewhere.
That's
so
right.
This year might be a different ball game.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting tech that I'm sure is coming out. Every day I hear of some new piece of technology that's doing something in the food industry, and I'm just like, whoa, really? We're doing that already? Okay. Sometimes it sounds very like Star Trek-y, and you're just like, what?
Well,
okay.
It's funny when I mentioned at the conference that, look at the movie iRobot.
That's right.
I mean, what was the latest toys that, like a week before the conference, Elon Musk shows his new toys?
Yeah, the bus thing, and then the other car. Yeah, that was.
So I told people I don't think robots are going to take over the world, but we're definitely living in a different place. And I think these movies, as far as they were like unconceivable in reality, we are currently living that reality.
Yeah, it's true, and I think we're living it quite quickly.
Yes.
I just heard they just released a satellite into orbit that's made out of wood. So it burns when it comes down to the atmosphere and doesn't, spray metal everywhere and hurt people. And I thought to myself, why aren't we talking about this more? It was a Japanese satellite. And I thought, that's amazing. Hello. That's the kind of stuff I want to hear more about, because that makes sense to me, like for betterment of humanity. Right before we go here, I want to know let me be more specific. For the listeners wanting to learn more about food defense in general and food safety, do you have any resources you could point people to? Because I can put everything in the show notes, but you're the expert.
Yes. Well, the FDA website, of course, they have a lot of guidances. They actually have a food defense plan builder that allows you to navigate through the actual regulatory requirements. Now, based on our conversation and how the regulation was made at a time where technology was still in its infancy when it came to all of the things that we have talked here, I would not just rely on the plan builder in itself, but also add, additional risk assessments that are not covered by the plan builder. There is a database of mitigation strategies also at the FDA website that you can actually reach out or look at, research for possible mitigation strategies as you do your vulnerability assessments. So again, the FDA website it's a great resource when it comes to food defense.
That's great. I'll put all that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed sharing the stage with you. I find that you are such a wealth of knowledge, and you make it easy for me to understand food defense strategies as well. Please do look at that FDA website, especially if you're doing risk assessments in food factories or any other places that are related to food or CPGs. You can take that into your assessment as a security assessment. Secret sauce, that's what I do too. But it also helps you understand the consumer and the customer that you're working with. And I think that that's more important, is the understanding of what's happening around you, rather than just, I'm going in to do an assessment like a robot. And you don't want that. You want to actually have conversations and meet people and understand the process, because it's people and process at the end of the day, not just the tech and the stuff. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure we're going to have you back on at some point too, because there's so much coming in the food news sector for sure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And likewise, it was a pleasure to co-present with you. I have learned a lot from you from the short interactions that we have had. So I'm looking forward to be working with you in the future as well.
Amazing. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's Bites and Bytes podcast episode. A big thank you to Radojka for joining us and sharing her expertise today, and also inspiring us to think differently about food safety and cybersecurity. Don't forget to like, comment, and share the show with your network, friends, family, coworkers, otherwise your neighbor. In the spirit of Thanksgiving, don't forget to thank a farmer, and remember all those who keep food safe for you and your family to enjoy. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.